Good morning. This is Arlan Suderman, Chief Commodities Economist at StoneX, coming to you from the trading floor on this Tuesday, February the 3rd, and the 45Z guidelines are out that we've been waiting for. Now, this is just one piece of the puzzle. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. The two pieces of the puzzle were the Treasury Department releasing the final guidelines and the 45Z funding mechanism for the biofuel program, which was part of the One Big Beautiful Bill passed this past summer, and the other piece is coming from the EPA, which will include overall the blending requirements, the small refinery exemption offsets, etc. That's the big one. This is a critical piece of the puzzle, but the big one is what's coming from the EPA. Now, as we look at this morning's guidelines, and I'm going to qualify these guidelines, it's a 170-page document, which I haven't had a chance to read through yet. So we used artificial intelligence to summarize. So please, I would caution you against acting and making financial decisions against what I say today or in line with what I say today until verifying. Because AI does need to be verified. But this does give us a quick summary of what's going on. A couple of things that I thought were really critical and key. First of all, hard geographic limit after 2025. For fuel produced after December 31 of 2025, Section 45Z funding requires that qualifying fuel be, quote, exclusively derived from a feedstock that was produced or grown in the United States, Mexico, or Canada. Now, that language is strict. It says exclusively derived, no blending, no dilution, no partial compliance. Feedstock origin matters, not just processing location. The bottom line is imported used cooking oil from outside North America is statutorily disqualified beginning this year, 2026. Now, the Treasury's Department's explicit concern about used cooking oil, we call UCO, is not subtle by any means. The proposed regulations go out of their way to flag used cooking oil as a quote high risk feedstock, stating that the Treasury and the IRS remain quote concerned about the ability to reliably distinguish between imported used cooking oil, UCO, and palm oil, and the resulting risk of crediting ineligible fuels. Because of this concern, foreign UCO pathways will not be available in the 45Z CF GREET model for fuel produced after 2025. And that GREET model is really the model used to give the carbon intensity score. And that's going to be a key now going forward. Now, the big picture, what is 45Z doing? It replaces the old patchwork of biodiesel, renewable diesel credits, slash renewable diesel credits with a single technology neutral clean fuel production credit that runs from 2025 to 2029. The value of the credit is now driven primarily by life cycle carbon intensity rather than the fuel type alone. For soy-based fuels, this is a shift, and I'm going to focus more on the soy-based side of things here this morning. For soy-based fuels, this is a shift from volume-based support to emissions performance-based support. Now, what matters most for soy-based biodiesel is that soy biodiesel is explicitly eligible, but CI scores, carbon intensity scores, is the gatekeeper on this. Low greenhouse gas emission biodiesel, including biodiesel produced via trans-esterification of U.S. soybean oil, is listed as a qualifying non-sustainable aviation fuel transportation fuel under the 45Z guidelines. Eligibility requires life cycle emissions calculated using the 45Z CF GREET model. The implication is soy biodiesel does not get a guaranteed credit anymore. Plants with higher CI scores, which would be plants with older technology, higher energy inputs, etc., will see materially lower credits than efficient plants using low CI power, improved process heat, or carbon capture. Now, the credit value depends on CI score, not just a fuel type. The credit formula is credit equals the applicable amount times gallons times the emission factor, where the emissions factor scales linearly as the CI drops below 50. Post 2025, which is where we are now, the maximum base amount is 27 cents per gallon or $1 per gallon if, and this is key, if the prevailing wage and apprenticeship rules are met, the PWA rules, if they're met, indexed for inflation. Now, the implications for biodiesel is its best in class soy biodiesel plants can still approach the $1 per gallon credit level that we previously saw prior to 2025 with the biodiesel blending credit. Average or marginal plants may see credits closer to 30 to 60 cents per gallon equivalent, depending on the CI scores. This does create winners and losers within soy biodiesel, not just versus renewable diesel. U.S. soy feedstock has a competitive advantage after 2025. Starting January 1 of this year, 2026, fuel must be produced exclusively from feedstocks grown in the United States, Canada, or Mexico, as I indicated. The implications for downstream soy products are U.S. soybean oil becomes structurally advantaged relative to imported used cooking oil or foreign vegetable oils. This likely supports domestic soy crush margins, reduces long term credit eligibility for renewable diesel pathways heavily reliant on imported UCO. Soy oil regains a relative attractiveness versus waste oil narratives that dominated under prior regimes. Now, indirect land use charge penalty is removed starting in 2026. For fuel produced after December 31, 2025, emissions attributed to indirect land use charges are excluded from CI calculations. What is the indirect land use charge? That was the ILUC was what was charged against the CI score for fuel produced in the United States on acreage such as soy oil, soybean production land, or corn, ethanol from corn land here in the United States, because the assumption that producing that crop in the United States for fuel required the destruction of rainforest in Brazil. Pretty difficult to make that connection when you look at the facts, but that was being charged against it. This now opens the door for better CI scores for U.S. feedstocks. This is a big deal for soy, and I would argue for ethanol as well, but I'm focused here today on soy. Soy oil historically carried a higher CI score in policy models due to the indirect land use charge. Removing the ILUC materially improves soy biodiesel's modest carbon score relative to prior framework, and we estimate it to be about a 30-cent advantage. Not, I shouldn't say advantage, but improvement in the value of soy oil as a result of this used in oil, used in the fuel. Soy-based intermediates still qualify, but no double dipping. Fuels made from another fuel that are already claimed 45Z are excluded to prevent double crediting. However, soy oil used directly as a primary feedstock for biodiesel, renewable diesel remains eligible. Now, the implications are soy oil demand for the first step fuel production is protected, but soy-derived fuels can't be endlessly reprocessed to stack credits. Market level takeaways for soy complex? Well, there's positive forces and there's some headwinds. Let's look at the positive forces. Positive forces, domestic soy oil demand is structurally supported post 2025. Removal of the ILUC improves soy's competitiveness with the CI profile. High efficiency biodiesel plants can remain economically attractive. The headwinds are the credit uncertainty increases, the CI management becomes critical, capital spending, for example, energy efficiency, carbon capture, renewable power become a prerequisite, not optional. Smaller or older biodiesel plants may struggle to stay competitive. Bottom line, 45Z does not eliminate soy-based biodiesel support, but it reprices it based on carbon performance. The policy rewards efficient U.S. feedstock-based soy biodiesel. It penalizes high CI score production, likely reshapes crush economics, plant investment decisions, and feedstock sourcing strategies across the soy value chain. Now, As I said, the higher value announcement that we're waiting for is coming from the EPA. That will be on the RVOs, the final blending requirements, the small refinery exemption, reassessments, recharge. Will they be recharged? What portion of them be recharged back to the larger plants, etc.? And that is yet to be determined. The EPA is working on those guidelines. At least they were before the partial government shutdown, and that gives us a setback. Once they go to the Office of Management Budget for review, that starts the clock ticking. It generally will take an average about 3 weeks for that review, and then the EPA would be able to announce them after that. So right now, assuming the government reopens here very quickly, we're anticipating that announcement to be early March, maybe late February, but probably more likely early March. Then the expectation would be that we would only have well, it's going to take a couple months for these fuel plants to get fully operational and going up to capacity. So that would leave them 8 to 9 months to do a full year's worth of blending possibilities or requirements here, and mandate to hit the mandates. So we anticipate now there's still a lot of different options here that could play out, but based on the White House's tendency to use the biofuel program as a support for agriculture during this tariff war and during tough times in agriculture, it is our opinion that it will be favorable for feedstock demand and that we'll see consumption of US based feedstock um, will be in high demand. I'll just say it that way. And so we're anticipating that it will be bullish demand for these cash feedstock sources once it happens. But we don't know until it's actually released, and the industry's not going to make that gamble until they know for sure to know whether they're locking in profits or losses. So the waiting game continues. We got a boost in soy oil prices today as the 45Z was announced, but the big announcement is still yet to come. And that gives soybeans probably the better chance to have a story to trade on as we go forward, at least until something else develops for the other ag commodities going forward. So be sure to like and subscribe if you want to continue to get these updates from the trading floor. I'll be with you as new developments occur.